Tonight you are going to put your baby to sleep in a cozy room. You lay them down in a warm crib, turn on the baby monitor, and close the door. It feels completely normal, and you won't think twice about it. But for 99.9% of human history, leaving a baby alone in the dark meant a death sentence. Without modern walls, an isolated infant was a direct target for predators that could smell a newborn from miles away. Our ancestors lived in a terrifying world where shadows held real teeth and claws, and a crying baby brought instant danger. So how did ancient families actually keep their helpless infants alive in the wild? The deep truth behind their survival will change everything you know about parenting, about family, and about what your body was truly designed for. Because the real journey begins with a major evolutionary trait. To see how our ancestors managed to stay alive, we have to look closely at the human body, because the biggest challenge to our survival is actually built right into us. Look at how other animals come into the world. A baby horse drops onto the grass and stands up on shaky legs within an hour. A newborn chimpanzee uses its tiny fingers to lock onto its mother's thick fur from the very first minute of its life. But when a human baby is born, it cannot even lift its own head. We cannot walk for a whole year. We cannot find our own food for several years. And we cannot last a single night alone without an adult keeping us safe. Out of all the mammals on this planet, human infants are born the most unfinished. And the big secret behind this flaw is the size of our brains. The human brain is incredibly huge. If a baby stayed inside the womb long enough to let its brain grow to a safe size, its head would become way too wide to pass through the birth canal. To solve this dangerous problem, evolution had to make a tough deal. Human babies are forced into the world with brains that are only 25% of their full adult size, while a newborn chimpanzee enters life with a brain that is already 40% complete. This means that a massive 75% of your brain development has to happen outside the safety of the womb during the exact years when you are completely defenseless. This is not a mistake in our design. It is just the heavy price we paid for having the most powerful minds on Earth. For 300,000 years, every single human mother had to accept this terrifying equation. She had to care for a baby that could not hold on to her body, a baby that could not run from danger, and a baby that could not even stay quiet when threats were hiding in the dark. In a world crowded with wild leopards, fast hyenas, and venomous snakes, a helpless infant was not just a newborn, it was a walking target. So how did ancient humans keep these incredibly vulnerable babies alive? The real answer is a piece of human history that modern society has completely erased from our daily lives. Our ancestors never tried to raise their children alone. In 2009, an anthropologist named Sarah Blaffer Hrdy blew the scientific community wide open when she published her groundbreaking book, Mothers and Others. Her research proved that humans are fundamentally different from every other great ape on the planet. A mother chimpanzee raises her child entirely by herself, carrying, feeding, and guarding her infant alone for 5 long years before she ever gets pregnant again. If another member of her group even tries to touch her newborn, she will turn aggressive and attack them to protect her space. But human beings evolved to do the exact opposite. Biologists use a specific term for us. They call us cooperative breeders. We survived because we built a system where children are raised by a whole group, not because we were trying to be kind, but because it was the only way to stop our babies from dying. The energy it takes to grow a massive human brain inside a weak, helpless body is just too much for one mother to handle. If our ancestors had not shared this heavy load, the sheer exhaustion would have driven our entire species to extinction a long time ago. We did not take over the planet because we were the strongest or fastest hunters. We took over because we learned how to share the weight of staying alive. The actual data behind this tribal network is absolutely staggering. When researchers went into the Ituri forest in the Congo to study the daily lives of the Fa people, they discovered something beautiful. They tracked newborns and found that a single baby is held and cared for by an average of 14 different people in just one 8-hour shift. 14 different pairs of warm hands. The infant is passed around from one person to another roughly 8 times every single hour. In fact, the biological mother only holds her own baby for about 40% of the day. The other 60% of the time, the child is resting safely in the arms of aunts, older brothers, grandmothers, neighbors, and even women who have no blood relation to the family at all. Some of these women will even step in and nurse the baby with their own breast milk if the mother is tired or out gathering food. In another famous study of the Aka tribe in Central Africa, an anthropologist named Barry Hewlett discovered a similar truth about fathers. He found that these fathers stay within arm's reach of their tiny infants for more than 47% of the entire day. These men are not following a modern parenting trend or trying to be helpful partners. They are simply living the way human beings have lived for hundreds of thousands of years. The baby was never left alone in a separate room. The baby was never set down on the bare ground. And the baby was never out of touch with a living human body. There was a matter of life and death behind this constant physical connection. A baby left alone on the ground was a dead baby. When our ancient ancestors started walking on 2 legs millions of years ago, they gradually lost the thick body hair that other primate babies used to lock onto their mothers. A chimpanzee infant can easily grab its mother's coat and hang on while she runs through the trees. But a human baby has nothing to hold on to. This meant human mothers had to carry their infants in their arms every hour of the day, every day of the week, for years. To free up their hands so they could work, they created the very first piece of human technology, baby slings woven out of animal skins and strong plant fibers. Not long ago, archaeologists digging at a 10,000-year-old burial site in Italy discovered the grave of a tiny baby girl they named Neve. Buried right next to her small bones were rows of decorated shells, which scientists proved were part of a deeply loved baby carrier sling. But carrying a baby was much more than just a way to move around. It was a biological tool for peace. When you pick up a screaming newborn and press them against your chest, their heart rate drops instantly, their breathing stabilizes, and they fall silent. Scientists call this the transport response, and it is a piece of survival software wired directly into our nervous systems. In the ancient wild, a crying baby is a beacon for predators. A baby that goes completely quiet the moment it is picked up is a baby that stays alive. Your own infant still carries this ancient program today. When you walk around the house to calm a crying baby, that is not just comfort, it is a 300,000-year-old predator evasion reflex running inside your child's body. The baby truly believes they are being carried away from danger, so they shut up to keep both of you from getting killed. But keeping them quiet was only half the battle. You also had to find a way to feed them. The way ancient families fed their children would make most modern parents completely freeze up. Mothers breastfed their babies for a minimum of 2 to 3 years, and in many hunter-gatherer societies, it lasted for 4 years or even longer. This was not a modern lifestyle choice, it was a hard necessity. There was no formula, there were no plastic bottles, and there was no clean well water safe enough for a weak infant to drink. Breast milk was the only sterile complete food available, and it was packed with antibodies that acted as the only medicine in a world with 0 hospitals. This intense around-the-clock nursing also did something else brilliant. It suppressed the mother's ovulation. Because she was breastfeeding constantly, her body naturally stopped her from getting pregnant again for several years. This was nature's original birth control, because if a mother had 2 helpless infants at the exact same time in the ancient wild, the chance of losing both of them went through the roof. When the baby finally grew old enough to need solid food, there were no jars of mashed fruit or boxes of soft cereal on a shelf. Instead, our ancestors used a method called pre-mastication. The mother, the grandmother, or whoever was watching the child would take a tough piece of meat or a hard root and chew it up in their own mouth until it was completely soft and broken down by their saliva. Then, they would push that wet food directly from their own mouth into the baby's mouth, lip to lip. The adult's saliva carried helpful digestive juices and strong immune cells straight into the child's body. Many anthropologists now believe this is the true evolutionary origin of human kissing. It did not start as a romantic gesture, and it did not start as a sign of affection. It started as a grandmother feeding a child the only way she possibly could to keep it from starving. But there is one more piece to this ancient puzzle that completely changes how we look at aging, and it involves a group of people we rarely credit for our survival. Most animals in the wild die almost immediately after they lose the ability to have babies, because from a purely evolutionary standpoint, there is no reason to keep a body running if it can no longer pass on its genes. Yet human women live for decades after menopause. In 1997, an anthropologist named Kristen Hawkes went to Tanzania to study the Hadza people who still live exactly like our ancestors did, and she discovered something that shattered our modern ideas about aging. The grandmothers were not weak or dependent. They were actually the hardest working foragers in the entire tribe, spending long hours in the blazing sun, digging up heavy deep roots that young children could never harvest on their own. By feeding these grandchildren, they allowed young mothers to have their next baby much sooner without putting the older child at risk. Hawkes named this the grandmother hypothesis, proving that your long life exists today because 300,000 years ago, an older woman gathering food in the dirt was the only thing keeping a child from starving. Menopause is not a biological breakdown. It is a brilliant survival strategy built to protect the family line. This brings us to the deep truth that should shake every single person living in modern society. For 300,000 years, no human being ever raised a child alone because the average mother in an ancient tribe had between 5 and 15 people actively helping her every single day. Today, we have cut that number down to 2, and very often down to just 1. We have traded the warmth of the tribe for the isolation of 4 walls, and we wonder why everything feels so impossibly heavy. When you sit alone in a dark apartment at 3 a.m. with a crying infant, listening to the silence of the city, and you feel that crushing weight of exhaustion, please remember one thing. The deep loneliness and anxiety you feel in those quiet hours is not a sign of personal weakness. It is not a failure of your character, and it absolutely does not mean you are a bad parent. It is simply the natural reaction of your body and mind trying to do completely alone what we were never biologically designed to do, alone in 300,000 years of human evolution. For the entire history of our species, the answer to whether a single person could raise a child by themselves was always a definitive no. We only made it this far because our ancestors shared the heavy load of staying alive, passing babies from one pair of warm hands to another. You were never meant to carry this whole world by yourself, so give yourself some grace and forgive your tired heart. If this journey back to our tribal roots brought you some comfort tonight, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. By joining us, you help build a community where we can continue to share these deep human stories together. Thank you for spending your valuable time with us. Take care of yourself, and we will see you next time.